We know divorce can be messy, it can be expensive, it can be a confusing process as well. And one company aiming to give customers some legal guidance, paperwork help, and access to mediators, all for a monthly subscription cost. Now they've raised $2 million in order to expand their services. Joining me now is Erin Levine, founder and CEO of Hello Divorce. Erin, thanks so much for coming on the show. You've got some new funding. Talk to me specifically about what services your company provides.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. This was our first capital raise, and while it was hard, we had this relentlessly optimistic team who came together, and it was an extremely healthy and helpful process for our executive team, surprisingly or not. What we do at Hello Divorce is we make the divorce process a lot easier and less stressful with a combination of software and accessible legal services, including mediation, to keep spouses involved in the process and out of court, regardless of their budget.
So here's my question, Erin. We all know that attorney fees can get really expensive, and your services obviously come at a cost, but on average, how much can you save a couple who is looking to go through a divorce?
The average cost of divorce, and this is a very shocking number, but the average cost of divorce in the United States is $15,000 per person in legal fees. In states like California, Colorado, New York, if you have children, that number goes up to $27,000 or more per person. On average, one or both spouses will spend a total of $2,000 on our platform. And if they are to spend that much, that means that they're really getting a hands-on concierge type experience. But we have services and products as low as $99. It really depends on your budget as well as the complexity of your divorce. And by complexity, I mean not just your financial complexity, but also the interpersonal relationship, because we know there's going to be conflict in divorce. That's inevitable. But the goal here is to keep people out of court, keep people out of lawyering up with the most aggressive attorney in town, and instead staying really focused on what matters to them most, which is transitioning from that we to me in the most successful, healthy way that they can.
So do both parties, Erin, have to sign on to this, right? You mentioned, obviously,
Well, actually,
you're getting divorced for a reason, but do both people have to agree to use this?
No, and that's one of the real differentiating factors with us. Of course, it is easier and quicker if both spouses get involved. But the thing is that in most marriages, there's a doer spouse. And usually in divorce, there's a doer type spouse too, even if it's not the person who necessarily wanted to get divorced, but it's someone who's going to start the process and get things going. If the other spouse then wants to join, then that is fabulous. Either way, we're going to keep them very involved in the process, make things as transparent as possible. Because what we find is there's a lot of fear because there's a lot of inaccuracies with what information is out there. And when you have that, you end up doing some really irrational things. So no matter what, we're going to keep them involved. But when the second spouse joins the platform, either at the same time or later on, it's a great way to get this moving as quickly and easily as possible.
Let me ask you this. How did demand change during the pandemic? I know we're 16 months in, roughly, right now, but we all kind of heard the stories. The first few months of the pandemic, you're in lockdown. It led to some pretty quick divorces in certain scenarios. How did that impact your business?
In so many different ways. So first of all, as soon as shelter in place hit, and we were already live in California and we started very quickly in the Bay Area, we had thousands of people who came onto the site and were terrified about exchanging custody with their spouse. So these were a lot of people who had already been divorced. They had questions about co-parenting and they didn't know where to turn. So that was very interesting to us very early on. What we found with a lot of our consumers going through now 16 months of ups and downs and roller coasters of emotion is that most people will tell you that 1 year of COVID or shelter in place is almost equivalent to 10 years in relationship. And for some couples, that was wonderful. They accelerated their decision to get married and came clear on their values. And for others, it meant that it was time to end that relationship. And because of that, we are seeing a huge increase on our site. I think it will take a long time before we see the full, fully what happens as a result of COVID, because most people, especially people in states that don't have access to Hello Divorce yet, they are used to or are learning that divorce can be a very long process. So while the rates haven't gone up tremendously yet, I suspect that in 12 to 18 months, we'll see a much higher rate of divorce, at least for this post-COVID or post beginning of COVID.
So Erin, then let me ask you, I mean, do you plan on raising your prices anytime soon? What's the model for that?
Our model right now is really to focus on the legal process, which is what we do best and what we offer people, and where the only place that you can find these integrated services with both DIY software and access to legal coaches, lawyers, and mediators. But with this fundraising, we plan to further expand nationally and to offer services that meet not just the legal needs, but the financial needs of divorcing consumers. And that's one thing I think is really wrong with the legal system, is that we do law in a vacuum, but lots of people have other issues like insurance and splitting assets that people really struggle with. So really that's going to be our big focus, is to build the content and the product and other services that people need to successfully transition out of their marriage.
All right, Erin, we got to leave it there. I hope you'll come on the show again. I think your service could be of use to people out there, viewers out there, so we appreciate it. That's Erin Levine, founder and CEO of Hello Divorce.